But when you lose money because you had a problem in the process and you didn't fix it and it happens again, that's when you lose your job. So processes break all the time. Errors happen all the time. I've made errors, $1 million, $2 million. It happens, right? But as long as you had that process in place, as long as you thought about it, it's okay. But when you don't think about it and you let it slip, and then an error happens or a mistake happens, that's when you lose your job. And that's what these guys are alluding to is, do not make a mistake. Do not mess up. It's because you always have to be thinking about what's the risk in my process? What's the risk in the job that I'm doing? Where do I have holes? Where can I address them? And make sure you're actively addressing them so that mistakes don't happen. And so with that, I think we'll open it up to the group for questions.
So, go for it.
All right. So I guess this is to all of you. What was one of the major obstacles that you guys had? I guess coming out of college and like planting your foot and getting your door and getting your foot in the door. What was one of the major obstacles that you had to overcome to be where you are right now? So I guess anyone of you guys.
Choose one.
Okay, Brian.
Sure. See, honestly, there were many. Let's see, when I was at USC, I started a small business. It was modestly successful, but I didn't go through the interview process. But I had a lot of friends that went through programs like SEO and Wall Street, different programs that enabled them to spend a summer in New York, etc. So after I sold my half of the business and went into consulting for about a year and a half, I was like, this is not what I want to do. This is really boring. I want to get into sales and trading and markets for a lot of different reasons, because I was getting exposed to that. I was trying to just go to any and all desks to try to find something new. I was that guy that would call and harass and, hey, I'll pick up the trash, I'll do whatever, I'll start in the mailroom. But I guess the biggest obstacle is just, coming from a background that didn't enable me to easily get in front of recruiters and employers off the bat just right away. So I still keep, for inspiration, I still keep those rejection letters that I had from 17 years ago, that said even my own firm, that initially rejected me, when going through that process. But stuff like that, these adversarial moments really kind of shape you. So getting seen and, it was really by chance, and not to make it a long story, but it was really by chance of just calling and putting your best foot forward and, trying really hard and making those connections. And I guess, to say I didn't come from the traditional background to get into sales and trading. And so, getting past those hurdles and the recruiters and Wall Street and all the people that come before, the decision makers, and, and I faced that probably for the first 6 to 10 years of my career, because I've been there now 17. But I was a sales assistant. Now I'm a managing director, and I oversee our capital markets business, so sales and trading driven, which is in aggregate combined with our finance business, a $200 million business just here down the street. So it's a big business. So you have to kind of break through, and it takes a long time. And the other piece of advice I would say is your timing. It's never on your own time. It's sometimes the timing is forced upon you. Sure, I would have liked to have gotten the job sooner, could have been promoted earlier. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you have to grind it out. You have to be there. Mike and I have a lot of war stories together, so you can definitely relate. So I would just say that in terms of, it's a long answer, but it's just to show you just how important it is to build networks, as I was saying. Some of those soft skills that I was talking about, instead of these gentlemen here, we're talking more about hard skills. I was talking about the soft skills, about how to kind of break through, understand those type of obstacles.
Let me just tag on to that. Just that, this is partly why Latinos in Finance was created. This is, first of all, it used to be the case, maybe perhaps a couple of generations ago, where the challenge was just being Latino alone was hard to get into the world of finance. And but I argue that today that's no longer the case. And I think that, as we heard earlier, given what we represent in this country and the force we represent at all different levels, it's something that you're starting to see more and more companies have divisions exclusively dedicated to bringing in Latinos into the corporation or Asians into the corporation. And that's going to be a trend that's going to start to grow significantly across the board. In New York Life, for example, we have that exactly. We have the cultural markets. And I echo exactly the building networks aspect of it, because don't wait until your last year of college to start reaching out to people in the career, in the finance world. Start earlier on. Start talking to family and friends that may be working at Schwab or somewhere else, or talk to their financial advisor. Go to a lot of informational interviews just to learn about their career. People love to talk about what they do. You know, just sit down there and become a good listener. But don't wait till your senior year for that. You know, start sooner, because by the time you get to your senior year, you'll already have that relationship. And when you meet these people from the get-go, by the time you become a senior year, you're going to know, hey, you know what? I'm going to graduate. I'd love to be able to get a job at BlackRock or at Schwab. Who do I need to talk to? And by that point, someone like me or Kenny will be more comfortable, rather than you just coming out of, you know, your senior year saying, okay, I need to find a job and I love finance. So network is key.
Question?
I guess.
Go ahead. Sure. Standing.
Oh, okay. So a lot of you guys just are very well spoken. So we've gone over the hard skills, being able to do the math, having that attention to detail. But how did you guys get so good at public speaking? Was it something that you were born with, or?
Let me answer that one actually, because I think it probably fits to me. I am a bad speaker. I am not good at, and growing up I was never good at being outgoing, outspoken, talking to folks. It was not whatever. As a matter of fact, they do this thing here at Schwab where they send you to a shrink and run you through this series of tests, and it comes out and they pull out your personality tests or your personality traits. So like my top 5 are analytical, academic, context is very important. Things like that. Dead last is speaking. And I ended up teaching, we'll talk more about this when we get to it, but I ended up teaching college courses, college classes in finance, and that's a lot of what we're going to do this afternoon. But it was because I was so fascinated by the topic, and I loved the topic so much, that I really wanted to do this, that I would rather face my worst fear, which is standing in front of a group and talking to people, as long as it allowed me the opportunity to sort of engage in this, in finance, in my weekend hours, I guess. So it comes to you, but you got to work at it. Sometimes it's not born. You're not born with it. You have to work at it.
I'll say that one thing. So when you start your career, you will notice a difference in communication levels as soon as you kick off. If you have a person next to you that studied U.S. literature for the last 4 years, their vocabulary is just going to be broader, right? You're going to notice those things. But what you can do is always prepare before you go to a meeting. Always prepare before you're going to speak. Think about what you're going to say. Take your time, and then speak. Similar to the email example, the more you work at it, the better you get. But think and prepare, and eventually you'll get there. Now, it's very important. Communication is everything. And as you start working in these groups where numbers are important, being efficient in your communication and being accurate is very important. So that's just by nature of our business. We can't really have very poor communication skills, because if we say one number and it's the other, you're done, right? So it forces you to be very accurate with how you speak on the phone or with others. But also, just as a general skill, remember that people, when they meet you, and you're going to talk about this in the communication session, when they meet you, they're looking at your body skills, your posture, and how you communicate indicates possibly your level of education, your level of understanding, your level of confidence, right? And that affects how well you're going to be able to communicate that message to the person. So focus on communication, but that comes with time. When you're green, people know you're green. And many times when the analysts come to the banks, they get work just because they know you're just really shy and you're going to back up and have trouble communicating. But through time, and as you get more confident, more knowledgeable, you'll work on it. But focus on it. Anyone else?
It's definitely an acquired skill, is what I would say. You don't get intimidated by thinking that either you have it or you don't. Same thing with writing, speaking in particular, doing it often. And keep in mind, it's also about communicating and relating to people, right? You want to make sure that they understand what you're saying, that they feel comfortable with you as the person bringing the idea. So that's a big part of it. And I mean, I don't want to make it sound too rigid, a skill, and you have to use these really extensive, kind of really complicated words to describe what you want to say. Most people, they prefer concise, clear language and a way that communicates to them and makes them feel like they're connected to you somehow. And I think you keep doing it, you practice it, and it comes. Part of our jobs, you have to do this on a regular basis every single day, and then you just become more comfortable with it. But it's nothing that nobody in this room cannot in a position that they cannot develop the skill. That's just not the case. It's like everything else, like learning how to drive or ride a bike. Do it often enough, it just comes.
Just a couple things that people have said here on the panel just now that I would wholeheartedly agree with. If it's a word, relatability is incredibly important. How well you relate, likability, relatability, those things are super important. Kim mentioned something about being prepared. I call it, what's our game plan? Every time we go to a client meeting, what is it that we want to get accomplished? You should be thinking about that as well. Every interaction you have with one of us or anybody else, what is your game? What what would you like to get accomplished? What information would you like to get? The other thing too, I think we're all kind of saying something similar, is just have some humility. As Kenny mentioned, he knows, we know that you don't know a lot, oftentimes very quickly. And so it's okay to not know a lot. Ask a lot of questions. Be humble, understand that, kind of where you're at. And just like, yeah, I'm really curious, but I don't know about, or you said something that I wanted to get you to clarify. So I think humility is very important in this business. I think it kind of, it leads to relatability. I think it's something that's very important.
Yeah, not having it hold you back too. Right?
Exactly.
If you think you know it all, you're not going to ask questions, you're not going to learn, and eventually you fall behind.
It's one of the things that I mentioned earlier, just about when I interview folks. If I sense that you think you know what you're talking about, I can cut you back down really quick.
Yeah.
It's not a good strategy to come in and act like you know what you're going to talk about. You just take down that guard and just maybe ask some questions. I think that you'll make a much stronger connection.
Yeah, and always have an opinion too. If you don't know, say I don't know, but if I were to think about it, this would be my thought process. So have that process when you communicate, and that helps. It opens it up, especially when you say, "Hey, I don't really know, but if I were to guess," we appreciate those types of answers. Questions? All right, I think we're out of time.
We have one more here.
Oh, one more?
This
Yeah.
young lady here.
This question is specific to Alejandro Caminos. You mentioned that you're originally from Venezuela and I'm from Mexico. So I want to know sort of like, how is the transition coming to the United States and then going into finance? How is the transition for you?
I think coming to this country was the hardest thing that ever happened to me. It was really, really hard. I came out myself, my family stayed down there. I was 17 and really didn't know what was going to happen. But then I did college up here. As far as my transition, and then of course that just really changed everything for me. As far as getting into finance, for me it was exactly what I mentioned earlier. It was, I was in computer science, I had a background in biochemistry, I was doing Latin American studies that just, really kind of figure out what I wanted to do, and all of a sudden, finance just popped in one day when a friend of the family took me to Wall Street. And this person, from that day on, I was just fascinated by the numbers, fascinated by everything about it. And I spent the time to really learn more and more over it was really my junior and senior years in college to learn about finance. I took the AT&T challenge, and I did all these different things. So by the time I got to my senior year and I was looking for work, I already developed a little network of people that I could reach out to. And then that's what I went into.
All right, thank you guys.
So we're gonna take about a 5-minute rest.